The man who went to China. Once upon a time, a man went to China. Then later on, he came back. This was at a time when people didn't go to China. It was a strange place and far away, like something in a book. But this man went, and then later he came back. And when he came back, he was rich. He traded things for other things, the usual things, expensive things. There really isn't much to speak of there. The only matter of interest to us is the box. The small lacquered box he came back holding in his hand. It was in his hand all the time, either one hand or the other, though sometimes when seated he'd rest it on his lap. But even then he was always touching it, caressing it, smoothing it, as if making sure that it was there, or assuring it that he was. The man was, of course, not Chinese, but he dressed and acted as though he were, and for this reason, those in the town who knew of him referred to him as the Chinaman. He lived in a large oriental-looking house on a hill overlooking the town. Every morning he sat and took tea on his porch, and every morning the box sat with him. The neighborhood boys soon took notice, and they began to argue about what was in the box. "It is a treasure," one said, "the Chinaman's greatest treasure, a magic amulet that lengthens a man's life." "No," said another, "it is a photograph of his wife, the Chinese wife he left behind." "No," said a third, "I think you're both wrong. It is his last will and testament." And the guesses went on until the boys finally realized there was one way to know the truth. One of them would have to go and sneak into the house and find and open up the little box. Only one boy volunteered. He was a small boy and poor. He had never done much, and always clamored for more. He looked around and saw that only his hand was up. At first he was frightened, but then he grew resolved. That night the boy crept into the Chinaman's house. He wound his way through the maze of artifacts. He went under the bird cages and over the carpets, and around the tall painted screens. And he approached the Chinaman's bedroom. The boy's heart began to pound. He stood in the doorway for a while. He stared at the darkness, waiting for his eyes to adjust. And then they did, and he saw. There was the Chinaman, asleep in his bed, underneath his fine silk sheets, and there on the pillow, resting beside him, unheld, was a small lacquered box. The boy moved closer. He moved very quietly. He reached toward the box with one hand. The Chinaman issued a small, sad sigh as the boy lifted the box, but slept on. In the adjoining room, the boy sat on the floor and started to open the box. His personal belief was that it would hold sweets, and his stomach was aching with hunger. He turned a small latch, and his drawer slid open. Inside the drawer was a tiny man. The man was smaller than the boy's little finger, and bound hand and foot with thread-like ropes. A tiny black bag covered his head and was tied tightly about his throat. Despite that, however, the man was alive. The front of the bag rose and fell. With trembling fingers, the boy started to undo the knot that held the bag closed, and when he was done, he loosened the string and gently lifted off the hood. There was the Chinaman staring back up at him, a minuscule version of the man, with a gag in his mouth, his eyes wide with panic, completely lost, terrified. The boy's mind reeled as he stared at the tiny Chinaman. This one looked younger than the real one. His hair was shorter, his skin was smoother, and he had an entirely different air about him. Less oriental, one might say, less traveled, less knowing, less wise. "Please," said a voice then, "put him back in the box." The real Chinaman stood in the doorway. "This is yours," he said, jingling a small leather pouch, "if you put him back as he was." The boy looked down at the man in the box. "But what is he?" he wanted to know. "He is nothing," said the Chinaman, "just as he always was. Now be fast, or all will be lost." The Chinaman tossed the bag of gold to the floor, and it spilled open before the boy's feet. The boy looked from the clattering coins to the face of the frightened, imprisoned little man. "Do you feed him?" said the boy. "What does he eat?" "He doesn't," said the Chinaman. "Now come. There is a fortune there waiting. Put back the hood, close the door, and pick up the gold." So the boy lowered the bag into place and slid the drawer back into the box. "Wait here," said the Chinaman, taking it from him. "Wait, and I will be back." He was gone for some time while the boy gathered his gold. The Chinaman returned with a box of kitchen matches. "Take this," he said, handing it to the boy. The boy opened it, looked inside, and frowned. "It's empty," he said, shaking it to be sure. "Yes," said the Chinaman, "but things change." The next day the neighborhood boys sat and waited for the boy to come and tell them what was in the box. But the boy never came, though they waited all day, and finally they grew concerned. They went to the house where they knew he sometimes stayed, and found he'd never come home the night before. They searched the whole town, but no one had ever seen him. They looked up to the house on the hill. They approached it slowly and stood outside. It was calm, very quiet. They knocked on the door, and the door swung open. The house was empty. The Chinaman was gone. And not just the Chinaman, all of his things, all his furniture, his paintings, his screens. The only thing they found was the small lacquered box, which they opened, but it didn't contain a thing. The octopus. The octopus is spooning sugar into his tea when there is a knock on the door. "Come in," says the octopus over his shoulder, and the door opens. It is Miss Jorgensen." "Got your mail, Mr. Octopus," she says, moving daintily into the apartment. "Thank you, Miss Jorgensen," says the octopus. "Would you like some tea?" "Well, yes, I'd love some," comes the response. "Do you mind if I sit down?" "Not at all," says the octopus, getting down another cup. "Not at all." He brings the tea to the table. "Oh, my aching feet," says Miss Jorgensen. "I've been up and down those stairs so many times today already." "I do appreciate you bringing up my mail," says the octopus, laying a spoon beside the sugar bowl for Miss Jorgensen. "Oh, for you I don't mind at all," she says. "It's just some of these other tenants. Everybody's got a problem, and I nearly tripped and fell on the third floor. There was some kind of puddle." "Puddles," says the octopus. "Puddles," says Miss Jorgensen. "Just sitting there in the middle of the staircase." The octopus looks confused. Then he sees the mail. "Do you mind if I?" he says to Miss Jorgensen. "Heavens no," she replied. "You go right ahead." This is good tea." "Darjeeling," says the octopus, leafing through the mail. "But there's really nothing good, just the usual stuff. Bills, catalogs, junk mail, more bills." And then the octopus gets to the last piece of mail. He sits there holding it gently in one tentacle. "What is it?" says Miss Jorgensen. "It's from the ocean," says the octopus, staring at the postmark. "I don't know if you still had folks there," said Miss Jorgensen. "Oh, yes," says the octopus. "Oh, yes, I do. My brother, my brother's children." "How nice," says Miss Jorgensen. "Perhaps it's from them." "Perhaps it is," says the octopus, and slits the envelope open. He reads for some time. He says when he gets to the end. He looks up to see Miss Jorgensen staring at him. "It's from my little nephews," he says. "Would you like me to read it?" "I wouldn't dream of it," says Miss Jorgensen. "I mean, unless you wanted to." The octopus smiles and holds up the letter again. He begins to read. "Dear Uncle Harley," he reads, interjecting, "My name is Harley. Hello from the ocean. We hope everything on the land is going well. The other day Aunt Hattie got into a fight with a cuttlefish. It was funny. We think we might like to come visit you, just the two of us. We've heard so much about you, we'd like to meet you in person. Would that be okay? Please let us know. Your nephews, Gerald and Louis." He finishes reading and lowers the letter. "Gerald and Louis," says Miss Jorgensen. "They sound like nice young boys." "Oh, they are," says the octopus, "or at least so it seems. I never really met them in person. I mean, they were only just hatched when I left, so they hadn't quite developed personalities." "Ah," says Miss Jorgensen. "Are you going to let them come?" "Well," says the octopus, looking around, "I don't really have a lot of room, just the couch, really. Where would the other one sleep?" "I have a cot I could bring up," said Miss Jorgensen. "Do you?" says the octopus. "Well, that would work. It would be nice to see some of the old gang again." "How long have you been here?" asks Miss Jorgensen. "About 15 years, says the octopus. "That's a long time," said Miss Jorgensen. "Yes, but I love it," says the octopus, looking around at his apartment. "Yes, but I do love it so." "Well," says Miss Jorgensen, "I guess you should be writing back. If you dash something off, I'll put it in the mailbox when I get down to the lobby. Would you?" says the octopus. "Yes, of course," says Miss Jorgensen, and so it is done. A few days later there is a knock on the door. "Come in," hollers the octopus, who is cleaning his spoons. But the door does not open. The octopus grumbles a bit, then gets down from his chair and glides across the room. He opens the door a crack. "Gerald and Louis," he says in surprise. "Uncle Harley," they say, all embrace. Come in," says the octopus. Gerald and Louis move inside the apartment. "So this is what an apartment looks like," says Gerald, his eyes roving over everything. "It's a little dirty right now," says the octopus. "Dirty," says Gerald. "It's amazing. So many treasures." He is looking at the octopus's collection of spoons laid out on the table for polishing. "There's my spoons," says the octopus. "I collect them." "What are they for?" says Louis. His voice is rather squeaky. "They're for moving small volumes of liquid around," says the octopus, "or solids like sugar. I use them all the time." All the three octopi stand there and stare at the spoons. "We don't have anything like that in the ocean," says Gerald. "No," says the octopus, "you don't." "Well," he says suddenly, turning, "Gerald, you will have the couch, and Louis, you will have the cot, unless you want to trade off from night to night." "No, that will be fine," says Louis. "I don't mind. I've never slept on a cot before." He goes and sits on the cot. He bounces up and down. "So where will we go first?" he asks. "Go," says the octopus, looking at him. "Go," says Louis. "What will we go see first?" The octopus doesn't know what to say. "You mean in the city?" he asks. "Of course," says Louis. "We just came from the ocean." "Oh, well, I don't know," says the octopus. "I don't really go out there." "You don't go into the city?" says Louis. "No," says the octopus, "not really." "Ever?" says Louis. "No," says the octopus. "I like it here." Gerald and Louis look at each other. "We thought you were going to take us around to see the city," Gerald says. "That's why we came." "I thought you came to see me," says the octopus. "Well, that too, of course," says Gerald. "It was both. "They said we could only come if you'd show us around and take care of us," says Louis. "Who?" says the octopus. "Who said that?" "Daddy and Aunt Hattie," says Louis. "Ah," says the octopus, "I see." "And now we're here," says Louis. "Indeed you are," says the octopus. The three octopi regard one another in silence. "Well, I guess I'll be being your tour guide," the octopus says finally. Gerald and Louis smile broadly. They spend the next day walking the streets of the city. Gerald has a map and Lewis is in charge of sunscreen. The octopus himself merely walks, staring up at the huge, awe-inspiring buildings and trying not to be terrified of the passing buses and cars. "You're more scared than we are, Uncle Harley," says Gerald. And Lewis and the octopus both laugh. They go to the museums and libraries. They listen to a concert in the park. They have lunch and dinner and go to an opera. At the end of the day, they find themselves sitting at an outdoor cafe. Gerald and Lewis are drinking root beer. The octopus has tea. "So," says the octopus, "what do you think?" "It certainly is large," says Gerald. "It certainly is huge," says Lewis. The octopus nods. "Yes, it is," he says. "Yes, it is." "Is it true that you'll live forever?" says Gerald out of the blue. "I mean, if you stay here?" The octopus looks at him thoughtfully. "It is," says the octopus. "It is true, supposedly, of course. I guess the only way to tell for sure is to stay here and find out." "But why does it work that way?" says Lewis. "Why can't we live forever in the ocean?" "I don't know," says the octopus. "That's just the way it is. When an octopus comes to land, he lives forever. It's just the way it is, like the way some people have brown hair and some people are blonde." Gerald and Lewis sits and stares at their sodas. "Has Dad ever been here?" Gerald asks. "No," says the octopus. "Your dad has never been much interested in land." "Why is that?" says Lewis. "I don't know," says the octopus. "He just wasn't. He met your mom, and they were very happy, then they had you. So there was never really time for coming to visit the land, or for thinking about living here." "But why don't we all live here?" says Gerald. The octopus looks at him and smiles. "It just doesn't work that way," he says. "It just doesn't work that way." That night the octopus tucks Gerald and Lewis into bed. "Sleep tight," he says. "Tomorrow you go back to the ocean." "What, already?" says Gerald and Lewis. "I'm sorry," says the octopus, "but yes, I have a lot of things to do and I can't do them with you boys hanging around all the time. I love you, though. You boys know that?" The boys grumble a little, but say yes. "Good," says the octopus. "Then good night." He pats the boys on their heads and then goes into the kitchen. He makes himself a cup of tea and stirs sugar into it with a spoon. He listens to the clanking noise the spoon makes against the cup and watches the liquid as it swirls around. A circle, a circle, a circle, a circle. Then he returns to the living room. The boys are fast asleep. He stands there in the darkness watching them. Then he returns to the kitchen and opens a cabinet. Inside the silver polish in the drawer the spoons. The next morning they are all off to the beach. "Shall I carry your suitcase?" the octopus says to Lewis. "Oh no," says Lewis. "I got it." They move down the staircase. In the lobby they pass Miss Jorgensen. "Why, Mr. Octopus," says Miss Jorgensen, "you're out and about, just taking the boys back to the sea," says the octopus, and the boys wave hello and goodbye. They take the subway to the beach. The subway is very crowded. "Where are all the people going?" says Gerald. "There are so many of them." "I don't know," says the octopus, looking around. "I always wondered that myself." When they get to the beach, Gerald and Lewis trudge down to the water line. "Are you sure we can't stay with you another day?" asks Gerald. "I'm positive," says the octopus. "I'm sorry, but why can't we stay?" says Lewis. "There's no reason," says the octopus. "I just can't let you. Please, boys, just do as you're told." The boys grumble some more, but they're not really angry. They gave the octopus great big hugs. "Goodbye, Uncle Harley," Gerald says. "Goodbye, Uncle," says Lewis. "Goodbye, boys," says the octopus. "Now off with you." And he stands there and watches as the boys slap down into the surf and wade out beneath the waves. "Thank God that's over," thinks the octopus. "Now I can go back to my life." But strangely the octopus does not turn. Instead he stands there and stares off into the gently rolling surf, down into the water after Gerald and Lewis. In his mind the octopus pictures his brother, their father, and poor Aunt Hattie, and all of those other octopi he used to know in the days before he lived on land. He remembers the day he turned away from them, the day he swam away, the day he walked up onto the beach and headed into the city and found the apartment. He remembers the day he began drinking tea and the day he started collecting spoons. He remembers the day he stopped getting his mail and let Miss Jorgensen bring it up to him. He remembers in turn all of these things, all of them and more. He remembers the tea as it swirled around and around in a circle in his cup. The octopus suddenly finds himself walking down the beach to the water. He feels the sand under his tentacles, and then the water washing over them. "My God, the water feels good," he thinks. "I had almost forgotten." He stands in the shallows, gazing out, and then, in one motion, he dives in. The octopus swims toward the depths, his tentacles waving free, and something inside him opens up. Suddenly, he can breathe. "I'm coming, brother," he calls out, in his mind and in the sea. "I'm coming, nephews. I'm coming, friends. I'm coming home. It's me." The path. The man is on a path. It is a funny thing. Life sort of gives him hints. Just before the phone rings, the man will look over. When he gets an urge to play the lottery, he wins. The man has a job, and he does it very well. Everything comes easily to him. He makes the right calls, he says the right things, he gets raises and benefits and perks. Then one day the man is walking home from work, when suddenly he is hit by a car. The man wakes up in the hospital. He doesn't understand. "Me?" he says. "Hit by a car?" He looks around. It doesn't make sense. And that's when he sees his path is gone. The path he's always been on is gone. The man doesn't know what to do anymore, how to do anything. He doesn't even know how to work the water fountain. Can't figure out when it's time to go to the bathroom. His wife and children come to visit. The man doesn't know their names. Is there something wrong with his brain? His wife says. The doctor shakes his head. He's just thrown a little, he says to the wife, and the accident, he'll be fine. But the man isn't fine. That's the thing. When he's discharged, he goes back to work, but he's just no good at his job anymore. He has no idea how to do it. He can't even find the office half the time. And when he does somehow manage to stumble in, he sits behind his desk, staring out at the clouds as they drift back and forth across the sky. The man's wife is worried. She doesn't understand. So the man finally tells her about the path. It used to be there, he explains, and now it's gone. His wife doesn't know what to say. She puts her arms around him and holds him close, but leads him down the hallway to bed. But like all the other things that used to come so easily, this one doesn't come anymore. The man begins to take long walks late at night. He wanders around in circles aimlessly. Then one morning he comes home to find that his wife and his children are gone. The man stands in the bathroom with a gun to his head. Slowly he pulls the trigger. He hears the shot, then 5 more. He lowers the gun and looks over. There are 6 holes in the wall, right beside his head. 6 little round perfect holes, but there are no holes at all in the man's head. There are no holes there at all. The man finds himself walking from the bathroom. He finds himself leaving the house. He finds himself walking across the street, through a bus, a park bench, an empty lot. The man finds himself walking and walking on and on. The path that he walks on is always a straight line, and the straight line always leads him on. The man never thinks about where he's going. He never thinks about turning back. As for his life, his children, and his wife, the man put a line through all that. He walks off. The hunter's head. A hunter returns to his village one night with a severed human head in one hand. He jams the head into a stake and sticks it into the ground by his hut. Then he goes inside and falls asleep. The people of the village stand at a distance and stare at the head in horror. They mutter among themselves all night long and worry about what the hunter has done. But in the morning, when the hunter emerges from his hut and heads back out into the jungle, none of them says a single word. They just stand and watch him as he goes. Then when he's gone, they turn as one to look at the head again. But none of them has the courage to approach it except for one small boy. The severed head, it turns out, is that of a woman, a young woman, neither beautiful nor ugly. The boy stares at it in silence for a moment, then the head opens its eyes. "Boo," it says, and the boy jumps. "Sorry," says the head, "didn't mean to scare you. I thought you were dead," the boy says. "Dead," says the head, "what do you mean?" The boy doesn't know how to answer. The head's eyes wander around. "Where am I?" it says. "This doesn't look familiar." "You're in our village," says the boy. "Did you come from a village?" he adds a moment later. "A village," says the head. "I don't remember." It frowns for a while and it seems to think. "I can't remember very much," it says. The head seems sad, so the boy tries to cheer it up. He tells the head stories about his life. He tells it the story about the time his brother got his toe bitten off by a raccoon. The head laughs and laughs and laughs and laughs. Then the hunter returns from the jungle. This time he is carrying 2 heads. He doesn't seem to notice the boy as he affixes the heads to the stakes. He jams the stakes down to the ground, just like he did with the first. "Where are these heads coming from?" says the boy. But the hunter walks right past him, goes inside the hut, and falls asleep. The boy looks over at the 2 new heads. They open their eyes and stare back at him. "Who are you?" the two new heads say. "A boy," says the first head. "His brother lost a toe to a raccoon." "Ah," the 2 new heads say. They look at the boy. "Ah," they say. In the morning the boy rises early and follows the hunter into the jungle. The hunter moves quickly. It is hard to keep up, and it's harder and harder as they go. The boy follows the hunter all day. He loses all track of where he is. All he knows is he's farther from the village than he's ever been in his life. But eventually the hunter starts to slow. He stops behind a tree and looks out. Then he readies his machete and spear. The boy looks out to follow the hunter's gaze. There is a village in the clearing beyond the tree, and it is full of villagers, just like those back at home, going peacefully about their lives. They are talking and laughing and carrying on just as though nothing were happening, just as though no one were hiding behind the tree getting ready to jump out and kill them. The hunter charges. The villagers panic. They scream and shout, and there is nothing they can do. The hunter chops and stabs and spears and clubs them and hacks off 3 more heads. Then he gathers the heads up into his arms and runs back into the jungle again. He runs, unseeing, right past the boy. A moment later, the villagers come after him. The boy takes off running after the hunter. With the villagers behind in pursuit, the boy runs for his life without looking back. He runs as fast as he can. He runs until his heart thumps in his chest and all he can hear is his breath. And in his mind he hears the screams of villagers as the hunter hacked them to death. Somehow the boy makes it back to his own village, alive, with his pursuers left behind. And there he finds the hunter already by his hut, jamming the 3 new heads into the ground. Late that night the boy enters the hunter's hut and stands over him in the dark. He wants to know why the hunter kills those people, wants to know why he chops off their heads, But there is nothing about the hunter sleeping for that explains anything to the boy, anything at all about what's in his mind, why he does the thing he does. When the boy finally turns and steps from the hut, he finds 6 severed heads out there waiting. "You have to kill him," says the first. "You have to do it," says the second. "You're the only one who can," says the third. "If not, then who?" the 3 others say. "If not you, then who?" the heads say. The next day the boy hides in the shadows of his mother's hut and watches the severed heads as they talk. He can't hear what they're saying, but he knows it's about him. Their eyes keep glancing his way. The boy is holding a knife in his hand, a small knife he found in the dirt. He feels the edge of the blade with his thumb. He winces as it threatens to break the skin. That evening when the hunter returns from the jungle, he doesn't even bother with the stakes. He just dumps all the heads he's carrying in a pile by his hut and goes inside and lies down to sleep. The boy stares at the piles of heads, and the heads in the pile stare back. Some time passes, and then some more. Then it gets very dark. The boy rises from his hiding place and steps forward. "Do it," whispers one of the heads. "Think of his head as a toe," it says. "Be like the raccoon," it says. "Do it for us," says another head, "and so there will never be any more." "Do it," says the rest. "Do it, do it, do it," say all of the heads. And so the boy does it. There's a lot of blood and it takes quite some time, but when he finally emerges from the hut with the head, the boy's mind feels strangely calm. He places the hunter's head on a stake and jams it into the ground. The other heads have closed their eyes. The boy slips into the jungle and is gone. The duck. A duck fell in love with a rock. It was a large rock, about the size of a ducky actually. That was situated off the bank of the river, a little past the old elm. Every day after lunch the duck would saunter off to admire the rock for a while. "Where are you going?" said the other ducks. "Nowhere," said the duck, "just around." But the other ducks knew exactly where he was going, and they all laughed at him behind his back. "Stupid duck is in love with a rock," they sniggered. "Wonder what kind of ducklings they will have." But there was one duck, a girl duck, who did not laugh. She had known the strange duck for a long time, and had always found him to be a good and decent bird. She felt sorry for him. It was hard luck to fall in love with a rock. She wanted to help, but what could she do? She trailed after the duck and watched him woo the rock from behind a tree. "I love you," the duck was saying. "I love you, I love you, I love you. I love you more than the stars in the sky. I love you more than the fish in the river. I love you more than... Then he stopped, for he could think of nothing else that existed. "Life itself," said the girl duck from behind the tree. She hadn't meant to pipe up. The words just sort of leapt out of her. The duck spun around to look at her. He was terrified. "It's okay," said the girl duck, waddling out from behind the tree. "I know you're in love with the rock. In fact, everyone knows." "They do," said the duck. "Yes," said the girl duck. "Yes, they do." The duck sighed and sat down on the ground. If he had had hands, he would have buried his head in them. "What am I going to do?" he said. "What am I going to do?" "Do," said the girl duck. "How can it go on like this?" said the duck. "I love a thing that cannot speak, cannot move, I don't even know how it feels about me." The girl duck looked at the rock. She didn't know what to say. "I know," said the duck. "You think I'm crazy. You think it's just a rock. But it isn't just a rock. It's different. It's very different." He looked at the rock. "But something has to happen," he said, "and soon, because my heart will break if this goes on much longer." That night the girl duck had a hard time sleeping. She kept paddling around in circles, thinking about the rock and the duck and his heart that might break. She thought long and hard, and before morning she had an idea. She went and woke up the strange duck. "Things happen when they must," she said, as if it were an extremely meaningful statement. "So," said the duck. "So I have a plan," said the girl duck, "and I think that will work." "Well, what is it?" said the duck, nearly bursting with excitement. "We will need help," said the girl duck, "and it will take some time, and also we need a cliff." 2 days later they set out. It took 4 ducks to carry the rock. They worked in teams and traded off every 15 minutes. Everyone joined in, even though they'd laughed, for ducks are all brothers when it comes right down to it. "The cliff is over that hill, and then quite a ways to the south," said the most elderly duck. "I remember flying over it when I was a fledgling. It looked like the edge of the world." The ducks trudged on over their rocky way for hours, and then for days. At night they camped under the hedges and strange trees and ate beetles and frogs. "Do you think it will be much further?" said one of the ducks. "Maybe," said the oldest duck. "My memory is not so good any more." On the 6th day the ducks began to tire. "I don't believe there is a cliff," said one of them. "Me neither," said another. "I think the old duck is crazy." "My back hurts," said a third duck. "I want to go home." "Me too," said a fourth. "In fact, I'm going to." And then all the ducks began to turn for home. The rock fell to the forest floor and lay there. The strange duck looked imploringly at the girl duck. "Don't worry," she said. "I won't leave you." They watched all the other ducks flee homeward, and then they hoisted the rock onto their backs and trudged on. "What do you think what will happen when we throw it off the cliff?" said the duck. "I don't know," said the girl duck. "I just know it will be something." Finally, they came to the edge of the cliff. The drop-off was so great that they couldn't see the ground. Just great white clouds spread out before them like an endless rolling cotton blanket. "It looks so soft," said the duck. "Yes, it does," said the girl duck. "Are you ready?" The duck looked at the rock. "This is it, my love," he said, "the moment of truth, and whatever happens, please remember, always remember, I love you." And the two ducks hurled the rock off the cliff together. At first the rock simply fell, like a rock, one might say, like a stone. But then something began to happen. It began to slow. It began to grow. It began to change. It narrowed, it elongated, and it also spread sideways. "It's becoming a bird," the girl duck said. And it was. It was becoming a beautiful gray bird. Really not that unlike a duck. Its wings began to move slowly up and down, and it dove down and then coasted up. It looked back over its shoulder at the two ducks on the cliff, and it called out just once, "Goodbye," and then it was going, getting smaller and smaller, flying off over the blanket across the sky. The ducks did not speak much on the way home. "Do you think it will be happy?" said the duck. "I hope so," said the girl duck, and that was all. They really didn't say any more. When they reached the pond, the other ducks gathered around and clamored to hear what had happened. The duck and the girl duck glanced at each other. "Nothing," said the girl duck. "It fell." In the days that followed, the duck stayed to himself. The girl duck went and swam around in circles. She thought about the rock bird flying off into the sky. She saw it over and over in her mind. And then one day, not too many days later, she looked and saw the duck come swimming up. He was carrying a small salamander in his bill. "For me?" the girl duck said, and the duck smiled. The well. A boy is playing hide and seek with his friends when he slips and falls into the well. He treads water at the bottom and screams for help, but for some reason no one seems to hear. The boy tries his best to climb out of the well, but his fingers keep slipping from the stones. Soon they are raw and torn and bloody, so he gives up and treads water and hopes. The day drags on. The boy grows tired. Finally he starts to go under. The water pushes up past his chin, past his mouth. Then it goes into his nose. Abruptly the boy realizes he can fly. He flies up out of the well. He flies way, way, way up into the air and looks down over the surrounding area. He spies his friends far away reading comic books behind a barn. He flies over and lands, then walks up behind them. "Hello," his friends say when he comes into view. "Aren't you wondering where I've been?" the boy says. "Okay, where have you been?" the boy say to him. His friends say to him. But it doesn't really sound like they care. The boy stands there a minute, then turns and walks away. Then he stops again and spins around. "I fell into the well," he says very loudly. "Did you?" say his friends. "How'd you get out?" "I flew out," says the boy. "I flew right out." "We didn't know you could fly," said his friends. "Why don't you fly here for us, right now?" "Okay," says the boy, and he leaps up off the ground and immediately comes back down. His friends all laugh and laugh and laugh. The boy tries again and again, but each time he tries to fly, nothing happens. "It worked before," he says. "I swear it did." "Sure," his friends say. "Sure, sure." And they laugh at him again and shake their heads. Late that night the boy climbs out of his window. He shimmies down the drain pipe to the ground. He stands in the yard and tries to fly for hours. Nothing happens. Something's missing. Something's wrong. "Maybe it has something to do with the well," the boy says, and he turns and heads back across the field. When he gets there, he stands staring down into the dark. He can't see the water. It's just black. But at this point, the well doesn't scare the boy anymore, not like it used to, back before he flew. "Maybe if I go down there," he thinks, "I'll remember." So he climbs over the edge and lets go. It's different in the well at night, the boy finds. Much different, darker, and much, much colder. But the boy is not frightened. He treads water and waits. He can't wait to fly like that again. But as the hours pass and he again grows tired, the boy begins to fear that he won't fly. He begins to fear, in fact, and this is very strange, he begins to fear that he never flew at all. "Did I really fly up out of this well?" he thinks. "Did that really happen? Did I do that? Did I actually climb up the side like a normal person holding onto the stones? Or maybe," he thinks, "maybe I dreamt it. Maybe I dreamt the whole thing. Maybe I wasn't even down here in the well, and none of what I remember even happened." And as the boy thinks and thinks these terrible thoughts, he finds his body growing heavier, and then it grows heavier and heavier still until it finally seems like a rock. And then suddenly the boy is seized with panic. He's going to drown here, right here, in the well. He reaches out and lunges in the dark for the stones and desperately tries to hold on to them, but he finds his fingers now are even worse than before. They're bloody and shredded to the bone, and he finds himself slipping off down into the water, falling again and again. Somehow in the night it seems the boy's screams carry farther than they did during the day, and in his bed the boy's father hears them and awakens. He follows his son's screams across the field. When he gets there, he knows that the boy is slipping under. He can hear it in his son's voice. There is no rope, no ladder. There is no way down, so the father just steps forward and jumps. He lands in the water and comes up, arms out, but his son is no longer there. The father dives on and down, reaching and reaching, searching, until his hand finds his son in the dark. The boy's father pulls the boy back up to the surface. The boy's lips are blue. He is not breathing. The father holds him close, tries to pump the water from him, but it's too hard, treading water, floating upright in the dark. The father is sobbing. His son is going to die. He needs to get his son to the surface. He needs the grass. He needs the ground. But there is no way up. 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 Just then the father realizes he can fly. The shadow. Once there was a man who was afraid of his shadow. Then he met it. Now he glows in the dark. The TV in Winston Churchill. The television thinks it knows better than the family that's sitting there staring at it. Why do they watch this garbage, it thinks. It's so empty, so stupid, so dumb. So the TV decides to stop showing the family football and game shows and soaps. Instead, it shows them only educational programs, mostly opera, and shows about Churchill. The TV really likes Winston Churchill. The family, on the other hand, does not. Why does it only show opera, they say, and what's with all this Churchill stuff? The family takes the TV to a repairman, but he tells them there's nothing he can do. It's like the thing has a mind of its own, he says, so the family takes it to the dump. The TV sits in the dump alone. It has no electricity, so it can't do much. I guess I'll just have to think about stuff, it says, and so that's what it does. After a while, the TV starts to whistle. It whistles on and on. Says the TV, this is weird. It seems to be writing a song. The TV concentrates on the song, and the song grows and grows, and then the TV notices the song is giving rise to others. Am I writing an opera? The TV says. And it is. That's exactly what it's doing. The TV is writing an opera of its own, an opera about Winston Churchill. When the opera is finished, the TV is happy. What a great opera, it thinks. It sits there in the junkyard and goes over it, editing and polishing and perfecting. I wish I could show this opera to someone, the TV thinks, looking around. I guess I'll just have to go to town. So it gets up and waddles down the road. The TV walks down the main street into town. Come on, come on, it says. Look, everyone, a talking TV. And they all come and gather around. Plug me in, the TV says, and I'll show you the best show of all time. So one boy runs and gets a long extension cord. Minutes later, the opera begins. It is indeed a marvelous opera. The TV weeps with joy for it. It weeps with joy to see it performed. It weeps with joy to show it. It watches its images wash over the crowd's faces, and it thrills all its melodies soar. It can't believe it's made something so good. It can't believe it hasn't done it before. On screen, Winston Churchill is singing. If you're going through hell, he is singing. If you're going through hell, he is crying out. If you're going through hell, keep going. Just then the TV notices that people are complaining. We don't like this opera. They are saying, why can't you show us some hockey games? Or what about a love story, another person says. Or maybe something about the army where stuff blows up. Or a show about aliens or teenagers and fancy cars. But this is all that, the TV says. This is all of that and more. Don't you see? Don't you feel? Don't you understand the beauty here? But the people just turn away. Call us when you've got something better, they say, and they go back to their homes and close the doors. What do I do now, the TV says. It's standing alone in the square. I guess I could just go back to the junkyard, it thinks, but it really doesn't want to do that. The TV thinks of the townspeople around, all tucked up in their little homes. It thinks of their TVs. They certainly have them, showing them all those dumb shows. Somewhere in the world, the TV thinks, there's got to be someone who cares, someone who's interested in quality programming, who cares about a TV who cares. So the TV unplugs itself and looks off down the road, peers way off into the distance. It's a long road, a dark road, and the TV's never been on it. It has no idea where it goes. But the strings start in, and the horns enter brightly, and the curtain rises from the floor. If you're going through hell, a voice starts to sing, keep going, and the TV steps forward. Death and the Fruits of the Tree. A man was walking down a long, long road when he saw a figure approaching from the distance. The man kept wondering, so it kept going, wondering who it was, when suddenly he realized it was Death. Crap, said the man. He turned and looked around. There was a tree nearby, one with lots of leaves, so the man ran to it and climbed up in the branches and hid among the fruits peering out. After a while, he saw Death coming down the road. He felt very still and tried not to breathe. Keep going, he thought. Keep going, but Death didn't obey. Death stopped. The man felt his heart constrict as Death turned to the tree. He felt the blood freeze in his veins as Death looked up. Somehow he knew that despite all of the leaves, Death could see him there in his hiding place. How, thought the man, how if he can't see me? How does he know that I'm here? And then the man realized that in the grip of fear his hands were shaking, and they were shaking the tree. Oh, thought the man, I have to make them stop. He gripped the branches as tightly as he could, but the more he tried to hold them still, the more they shook and shook, and the man began to despair. And in the road, Death smiled. And right then it happened, the worst possible thing. One of the fruits detached from the tree. The man's shaking had loosened it, and loosened it, and loosened it, and now it broke free and it fell, and Death saw the fruit fall, and Death came closer until he stood at the foot of the tree. And then he turned his head and looked up. through the branches and the leaves until he saw the man and the man saw him. And Death smiled, reached down, and picked up the fallen fruit, and he opened his mouth and took a bite. "Yes," said Death, in that voice that Death has. "The unripe fruits are best, I always say." Panic seized the man. The end, he knew, was near. When Death finished the fruit, he would be next. "Think," thought the man. "Think, think, think." But he couldn't think of a single thing to do, and then from somewhere on the other side of Panic, an idea suddenly came to the man. It might work, he thought. It really just might work. And purposefully he began to shake the tree. First his efforts had no effect, but the man did not give up. He shook the tree with all his strength he had. He shook the tree with everything, his entire being, and the little fruits broke free from the tree and rained down hard on Death. "Darn you, Death! Die, die, die!" yelled the man, as the fruits smashed against Death's head and face and neck. And then in one sudden snap the other fruits all broke free, and they came down like an avalanche and buried Death beneath them. At first in the aftermath there was only silence, and then in the silence the man looked back, and suddenly he realized that during the rain of fruit, Death had simply laughed and laughed and laughed. The man stayed in the tree for quite some time until he was sure it was safe, and then when he climbed down very, very slowly, he stood looking at the great mound of fruit. He tapped it lightly with one foot, and the fruits all rolled aside, and there beneath there was no Death, nothing, no body, not a thing. "Well, all right," said the man. "I guess that settles that," and then he turned and hit the road again. Not long thereafter, the man came to the hill. When he got to the top, he looked down, and there in the valley below, he saw a figure coming toward him. A man, the man thought, just a little man. And at that very moment, the little man looked up. He saw the man seeing him, and he froze. He turned and looked around, all around, panic-stricken, and he saw a nearby tree, and he ran. And the man on the hilltop smiled and watched as the little man started to climb. "You think you can hide," said the man, "from me?" And he walked into the valley to see.